Imagine the silence of a museum at night, every masterpiece in its place, every painting a treasure of history. But at 1:24 a.m. on March 18, 1990, the quiet was shattered. A single knock on the door. A lie whispered into an intercom, and suddenly a $500 million ghost story began. This is the story of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist, the world's largest art theft, crime that remains unsolved. The story of the Gardner heist isn't just a crime story. It's a story of a woman's singular obsession. Isabella Stewart Gardner, a Bostonian socialite and patron of the arts, didn't just collect art, she created a world for it. Her museum, completed in 1903, was a personal cathedral, a Venetian-style palazzo built to house her meticulously curated collection of over 2,500 objects. She dictated every detail, from the placement of a Vermeer masterpiece to the type of light that would hit a statue. She famously stipulated in her will that nothing should ever be changed. No new art added. No existing art moved. The museum was to be a living, breathing testament to her vision. And for decades, it remained just that. A jewel box of culture, a place where time stood still, a fortress of artistic perfection. But in the early morning hours of March 18, 1990, the sanctity of this world would be violated in the most audacious way imaginable. A world of quiet beauty was about to be turned upside down. The city of Boston was buzzing. St. Patrick's Day weekend had just drawn to a close, leaving a wake of celebrations and revelry. For the museum's security, however, it was just another night. The duty log for Sunday, March 18th, listed the two men responsible for the security of a $500 million collection: Richard "Rick" Abath and Randy Heston. Abath, a 23-year-old college dropout with aspirations of being a rock and roll musician, had been working at the museum for a year and a half. He was familiar with the patrols, the quiet corridors, and the delicate beauty he was sworn to protect. Randy Heston, a fellow security guard, was working his first night shift ever. He was new to the building, new to the job, and completely unaware of the chilling history he was about to be a part of. The two guards were positioned in the main security room, a small, unassuming chamber with a monitor displaying 64 different cameras, but only a handful of which actually worked. A single critical detail that would prove fatal. A disturbing interruption. The tranquility of the night was shattered at precisely 1:24 a.m. A buzzer at the museum's side door, an entrance rarely used and largely invisible to the public, rang with a persistent, cold urgency. It was a disturbance, an interruption to the silent ritual of their rounds. Abath, with Heston at his side, checked the intercom. On the other end, two figures stood in the darkness, obscured by the low-quality camera feed. They wore Boston police uniforms, complete with hats and badges. The voice from the intercom was calm, authoritative. "We heard a disturbance. We need to check it out." Abath, having been told by his superiors to always be cooperative with law enforcement, pressed the buzzer. It was the most consequential action he would ever take. The lure and the lie. The two men entered and were led into the security room, a space that was supposed to be a fortress, not an invitation. The men looked the part, tall, well-built, with crisp uniforms. But something wasn't quite right. Abath, in a moment of clarity he would later replay in his mind endlessly, noticed a peculiar detail. One of the officers had a mustache that seemed oddly thick and unnatural. A disguise. A lie. It was a fleeting thought, but one that would define the next few hours. The man with the fake mustache looked at a bath and said, "We have a warrant out for your arrest." The thieves had done their homework. They knew exactly how to exploit the psychology of their victims. The claim was baseless, a cunning ploy to get a bath, to lower his guard, to make him believe he was in trouble, to get him to cooperate. He was told to step away from his desk, to stand against the wall. And in his moment of fear and confusion, he did exactly as he was told. The swift subjugation. The moment a bath stood against the wall, the charade ended. The fake mustache wearer revealed his true intent. "Don't give us any problems. This is a robbery." A bath was swiftly handcuffed, his hands behind his back. The second guard, Randy Heston, walked in to find his partner subdued. The thieves, with chilling efficiency, showed him no mercy. Heston was handcuffed in a similar fashion. The thieves had complete control. They wrapped black duct tape tightly around the guards' eyes and mouths, a final, suffocating gesture to ensure their silence. The final step of their plan was to remove the guards from the security room, from the very heart of the museum's alert system. The two men were led down a flight of stairs into the museum's dark, cavernous basement. There, they were tied to a workbench and a steam pipe, left in a state of helplessness. In a mere 15 minutes, the guards were neutralized, the security system was compromised, and one of the world's most valuable collections was left undefended, waiting for the thieves to choose their prey. The clock is ticking. With the guards subdued in the basement, the thieves had the run of the museum. The official timeline states they had 81 minutes to operate, a stunning amount of time for a robbery of this scale. But their actions during that time would defy all logic. Investigators later concluded that the thieves, once inside, did not follow a pre-planned route. Instead, they moved with a strange, almost casual confidence, as if they knew the building intimately. Their first stop was the Dutch Room, one of the museum's most sacred spaces, located on the second floor. This room was a treasure trove of masterpieces, a testament to the golden age of Dutch painting. The Dutch Room and the cutting of canvas. The Dutch Room was where the most egregious act of the night occurred. The thieves didn't simply lift paintings from the walls. They savagely defaced them. One of them pulled out a knife and, with a few precise slashes, cut two priceless Rembrandts from their frames. The first was Christ in the Storm on the Sea of Galilee, Rembrandt's only seascape, an action-packed masterpiece capturing a moment of chaos on the water. The second was A Lady and Gentleman in Black, a large-format portrait of a well-to-do couple. The thieves left the massive, ornate frames on the floor, their empty voids a shocking testament to the violence of the act. The irony was palpable. They took the canvas, but left the valuable frames behind, suggesting they had little to no knowledge of the art they were stealing. But their crowning achievement of disrespect in this room was the theft of Johannes Vermeer's The Concert. This was one of only 34 known Vermeer paintings in existence, and is considered the most valuable stolen painting in the world. The thieves simply pried the canvas from its frame and walked away. They also stole a small Rembrandt etching and a bronze Chinese beaker, an artifact from the Shang dynasty. The choices were bizarre, a mix of the irreplaceable and the mundane. They ignored a masterpiece by Titian, considered by many to be the most valuable piece in the entire collection, which hung nearby. Why? The question has haunted investigators for decades. The short gallery, and the smallest thefts. From the Dutch room, the thieves moved on to the short gallery, a much smaller, quieter space. Here, their choices were even stranger. They stole 5 small sketches by French impressionist Edgar Degas. One was a watercolor, the others were charcoal and pencil drawings. They were valuable, certainly, but nowhere near the caliber of the Rembrandts or the Vermeer. The thieves didn't just stop there. From this gallery, they also unscrewed an ornate Napoleonic eagle finial from the top of a battle flag. It was a decorative piece, not a work of art, and its value was a fraction of the paintings in the museum. Their actions seemed random, almost rushed, but also strangely selective. They were in the museum for a purpose, but what that purpose was remains a complete mystery. A single painting and a lasting mystery. Their final stop was the Blue Room, located on the first floor. This room was a different world, filled with modern, 19th century works. Here, they took a small Edouard Manet painting titled Chez Tortoni, a charming cafe scene. Oddly, they didn't cut this painting from its frame. They simply took the entire thing and then, for some reason, moved the empty frame and left it sitting on a security director's chair. This one-off action, this seemingly careless choice, has puzzled investigators. Did the thieves simply drop the frame and not care? Was it a message? Was it a sign of a panicked escape? We will likely never know. The final moments. The thieves spent a total of 81 minutes inside the museum. During that time, they stole 13 items from 3 different galleries. But their work wasn't quite done. Before they left, they went back to the security room and removed the videotapes from the VCR. They left a crucial piece of evidence behind, a digital log of motion detector data. But in their haste, they also took a piece of the story with them. With their loot in hand, they made 2 trips out of the side door, into the waiting getaway car, and vanished into the early morning Boston fog. The doors locked behind them, leaving the museum silent, violated, and without a soul to discover the monumental crime until the next shift arrived hours later. A morning of silence. The morning of March 18, 1990, dawned like any other. The sun rose over Boston, casting long shadows on the quiet streets. At the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, the 8 a.m. security shift was about to begin. Guard Dennis Kerrigan arrived, ready to take over from the overnight crew. He noticed something immediately. The side door, the one he knew should have been locked and bolted shut, was ajar. A wave of unease washed over him. Inside, the museum security room was silent, and the lone VCR that should have been recording the night's events was empty. The videotapes were gone. Kerrigan's unease turned to fear as he made his way down to the basement, following a trail of clues that the thieves had left behind. There, he found his colleagues, Rick Abath and Randy Heston, still bound and gagged, but alive. A wave of relief was immediately followed by a wave of dawning horror. The heist had been a success, and for 8 long hours, the museum had been a crime scene without a witness. A crime scene of absence. The call to the Boston Police Department came in just before 8:30 a.m. Soon after, the FBI was notified, and the museum, once a sanctuary of art, was now a sealed-off crime scene. But what the investigators found was not a scene of overt violence or destruction. Instead, it was a scene of absence. A forensic team, led by Special Agent Jeffrey Kelly, moved with painstaking care through the galleries. The most damning evidence was the negative space. The empty frames left behind in the Dutch room and the short gallery were not just voids on a wall, they were silent accusations. The team documented every detail: the cut canvases, the shattered glass, the fallen clips, the discarded duct tape, and the empty frames, which were found piled up in a corner. The thieves hadn't just stolen art, they had stolen the very soul of the museum, leaving behind a profound emptiness. The FBI takes the lead. The scale of the theft was unprecedented. The sheer value and historical significance of the stolen works immediately propelled the case to the top of the FBI's priority list. This wasn't just a local robbery. This was an international crime, an attack on the cultural heritage of the world. The initial investigation focused on the one weak link in the chain: the guards. Their alibis were scrutinized, their pasts were dissected, and every detail of their accounts was cross-referenced with the crime scene. Rick Abath, in particular, was put through the ringer. He was the one who had opened the door, who had violated a fundamental security protocol. Was he in on it? Or was he just a naive young man who made a fatal error? The pressure on him was immense, and the suspicion from law enforcement and the public alike would follow him for the rest of his life. A public announcement of loss. As news of the heist began to trickle out, a stunned public waited for an official statement. On March 20th, 2 days after the theft, the museum held a somber press conference. The room was packed with journalists, cameras flashing, all eager to grasp the scale of the loss. The museum's director, Anne Hawley, stood before them, a picture of profound grief. She announced the names of the missing masterpieces, a litany of artistic genius that had vanished in a single night: Vermeer, Rembrandt, Manet, Degas. A reward of $1 million was announced for information, leading to the return of the art, a number that would eventually climb to $10 million, a testament to the desperation of the search. The images of the empty frames, released to the press, became a global symbol of the audacious crime, a haunting visual of what was lost. The haunting aftermath. The initial investigation was a whirlwind of activity, but it was fraught with challenges. The thieves were professional. They left very few clues, and they had been gone for hours before the police even arrived. The fact that the videotapes were gone meant there was no footage of the actual crime, a massive hurdle for investigators. They did, however, have the digital log of motion detector data, which showed the thieves' exact path through the museum, a map of their movements, but no image of their faces. The entire world was now watching, and the pressure to solve the case was immense. The empty frames were hung back on the walls, a conscious decision by the museum to honor the missing pieces and to symbolize their hope for their eventual return. They remain there to this day, a permanent, silent reminder of the night the art was stolen and the mystery of what happened next. A case that won't die. The immediate shock of the heist quickly gave way to a relentless, decades-long investigation. The FBI, led by a small team of dedicated agents, embarked on a hunt for ghosts. This was not a typical murder or bank robbery case. There were no bodies, no violence, and the crime had left behind a trail of confusing and contradictory clues. For years, the case went cold, fading from the headlines, but never from the minds of a few key investigators and the staff of the museum. The reward for the art's return grew over time, a constant reminder of the world's desperate hope for the masterpieces to re-emerge. It became a whisper in the art world, a legend in the criminal underworld, and a source of profound frustration for the law enforcement officials who dedicated their lives to solving it. The suspects, the usual and the unlikely. The investigation, over its 30-plus year history, has generated a long list of suspects, ranging from the obvious to the completely absurd. The first and most persistent theory pointed to the Boston mob, specifically the local Irish American crime families. Organized crime had the muscle, the network, and the motive to pull off such a large-scale theft. Key figures, such as James Whitey Bulger, a notorious mob boss, were investigated, but no concrete evidence ever linked them directly to the crime. There was also a strong belief that this was not a simple theft for money, but a transactional crime. The paintings, too hot to sell on the open market, could be used as a bargaining chip to secure the release of an associate from prison, or as collateral for a massive drug deal. This theory gained significant traction, suggesting the paintings were a kind of criminal currency, locked away in a vault somewhere, waiting for the perfect deal that never came. The inside job theory, the most compelling and enduring theory, however, has always pointed to an inside job. How else could two men dressed as police officers gain entry so easily? How could they know the location of the alarm panel and the security room? How could they navigate the labyrinthine corridors of the museum with such apparent confidence? All signs pointed to someone with inside knowledge. This led investigators to re-examine the role of the security guards themselves, particularly Rick Abath, the young guard who opened the door. Abath's story has been scrutinized from every angle, but he has always maintained his innocence. The lack of evidence ever tying him to the crime has left investigators with a powerful, unresolved suspicion. A new lead and the FBI's official stance. In 2013, the case was dramatically reopened when the FBI announced a major breakthrough. They believed they had identified open for over 3 decades. The shadows of the art world. The official police investigation into the Gardner heist has followed the trail of organized crime for decades. But in the rarefied world of high-end art, different theories have always circulated, whispered in hushed tones among collectors and dealers. Was this a mob job, or was it something more sophisticated? One of the most compelling theories suggests that the heist was commissioned not by a gangster, but by a gentleman thief, a reclusive billionaire with an insatiable desire to possess masterpieces that the public could never see. For such a person, the value of the art isn't in money, but in the exclusive pleasure of ownership. The thief takes a masterpiece off the public market, and it becomes a secret treasure, a ghost painting that exists only for them. This theory, while difficult to prove, has a poetic symmetry. The art didn't disappear, it simply found a new, unseen home. It's the ultimate fantasy for a certain kind of criminal, and for art recovery specialists, it's a terrifying possibility. The bizarre and the blurry. As the years passed and the leads went cold, the theories grew stranger. The case took on an almost mythological quality, and with it came some truly bizarre speculation. One theory, popular in the 1990s, was that the heist was somehow connected to Saddam Hussein. The idea was that Hussein, desperate for a way to move money out of Iraq, had commissioned the theft to acquire valuable assets that could be easily smuggled and later sold on the black market. While this theory was largely debunked, it spoke to the desperation of a world trying to make sense of a crime that defied all logic. Another popular theory involves a mysterious art recovery figure who claimed to know where the paintings were but was never able to produce them. The story goes that he was so close to recovering them that he had even seen the paintings himself. But like so many leads in this case, it led nowhere. The sheer number of false claims and dead ends has made the search for the art a chaotic, maddening pursuit. The private investigators. While the FBI and state police pursued their leads, a different kind of investigator entered the fray. The private art recovery ending. The passage of time, 35 years. A generation has come of age since the night of the Gardner heist. The men who committed the crime are likely dead. The guards who were tied up in the basement have lived their entire adult lives shadowed by that fateful night. The detectives who swore to solve the case have retired, passing their voluminous files to a new generation. The story has been told and retold, dissected, theorized, and sensationalized. But for all the books, documentaries, and news reports, the central fact of the matter remains unchanged. The art is still missing. The greatest art theft in history remains a cold case, a testament to a crime that, in a single night, stole not just masterpieces, but a sense of security from the art world. The question is no longer, who did it? But, will we ever know? The final hope, the investigation, against all odds, is still active. The FBI maintains its unwavering commitment to finding the stolen artworks. The special team dedicated to the case, now led by different agents, continues to follow any credible lead. The $10 million reward is still a standing offer, the largest private reward for stolen property in history. It serves as the museum's final desperate gamble, a golden key that might one day unlock the truth. The reward is a powerful incentive, a beacon of hope in a sea of dead ends. The museum has a clear message to anyone who might know something. The clock is ticking, but the door is always open. The hope is that one day, a person with a conscience, or perhaps just a person in need of a life-changing amount of money, will step forward with the information needed to close the book on this mystery. A city in mourning. The loss of the art has left a permanent scar on the city of Boston. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum is a beloved institution, and the theft was a violation of its very soul. The empty frames are more than just a memorial. They are a constant reminder of what was lost. They are a powerful tool for education, teaching new generations about the importance of art and culture. They stand as a challenge to the criminal underworld and a symbol of the enduring power of hope. The museum itself, in its commitment to never replace the works, has made the absence of the art a statement in and of itself. The empty frames are part of the collection now, a haunting exhibit that tells a story far more dramatic than the paintings ever could. The final words: this is the story of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist. It is a story of two ambitious thieves, an audacious act of deception, and a stunning collection of masterpieces that vanished into thin air. It is a story of dedicated detectives, strange suspects, and countless false leads. But more than anything, it is a story of a crime that became more famous for what was lost than for what was found. The art may be gone, but its story continues to be told. Its empty frames continue to hang, and its mystery continues to captivate us all. The legacy of the heist is not one of criminal genius, but of profound absence. So, the next time you hear about the Gardner Museum, remember the names: Vermeer, Rembrandt, Manet. Remember the staggering value. And remember the empty spaces on the walls. Because that is where the story lives now, in the haunting, beautiful, and utterly frustrating void. And until the art returns, the final chapter of this incredible story remains unwritten.